Hello, my name is Craig and I am a low S-rank player on the ladder in Starcraft Remastered. This video is a collection of useful tips and tricks aimed at new players in Starcraft who want to play Terran. Terran is very hard to play at the beginner level, so hopefully this tutorial will make life a little bit easier for new Terrans. This video does not cover any micro tricks or a particular build order in depth, since there is already a lot of material around for that. This guide rather focuses on the general base management aspect and how to simplify it. At the end of this video I also give a short explanation on how to react to early game aggression. I also want to address complete beginners with this video, so some advice I will give you here is probably well known to most players. With this being said, let's start with the tutorial. First of all, Starcraft is a strategy game, but you need to have the resources to put your plan into action. That is why being efficient is a big part of the game. The first thing you do at the start of a game is to build an SCV and to send your workers to the mineral line. And to have efficient mining right from the get-go, you need to send each SCV to a separate mineral field, so that they do not interfere with each other. This goes for every new SCV at the beginning of the game. Send each new SCV to a new mineral field, whereas closed mineral fields should be mined first. Hotkey your CC to a control group so that you can keep track of your SCV production and also build SCVs while your CC is off screen, for example when you control your scouting SCV. You probably know that newly trained SCVs do not start mining when they are rallied to a mineral field, but you should still make use of the rally point feature and rally your SCVs between the CC and the minerals. With that, new SCVs immediately accelerate in the direction of the minerals and you don't lose the time it takes to select the SCV and right-click it to a mineral field. This is especially helpful when your mineral line is on the right side of your command center, since new SCVs have a longer distance to the minerals. Now when you do that, you will occasionally have idle SCVs in your mineral line over the course of a game. In this situation you don't need to accurately select only the idle ones. You can just drag select them with a bunch of mining SCVs and then shift right click them to a mineral field. SCVs that are already mining minerals do not react to shift right click commands, so your mining rate does not drop. New units always spawn at the bottom left corner of a production building, if it is not blocked. So if your mineral line is on the right side of the command center, new SCVs spawn further away from the mineral line than they would for a mineral line on the left side. But if you start with a mineral line on the right hand side, you can improve the spawning location of the SCVs to reduce the travel time and increase your income by building your first depot right below the CC to block the spawning location at the bottom left. As you can see here with the depot, the SCV now spawns closer to the mineral line. Some tips regarding the gas geyser. The gas behaves similarly to the mineral fields. You can mineral walk SCVs to a gas by double right clicking on it. With that, you don't have to worry about getting an SCV out of your mineral line on time, for example to build your refinery. A finished refinery behaves like a mineral field, where a single right click is enough to mineral walk an SCV to it. You can also mineral walk an SCV to an unfinished refinery, but it doesn't work with right clicking. You have to press the shortcut for gather and then left click on the building refinery to mineral walk to it. This is useful when the refinery is about to finish and you want to start mining the pink gas right on time. If the refinery finishes before the SCVs arrive, they will automatically start mining. That is mostly it regarding SCVs mining. A rule of thumb is to never stop SCV production until you have like 60 SCVs. The only small exception is when you take your natural. In TVZ, for example, if you go for a 1 rex fast expand, you would typically pause SCV and marine production for a couple of seconds at 17 supply to have the 400 minerals for the CC. Right afterwards you resume SCV production. In TVP, if you go for a bunker expand with factory, the pause would be at 23 supply. In this case you would resume SCV production after you started the CC and the supply depot. When your natural CC is about to finish, you should transfer SCVs from the main to the natural to increase the mining efficiency of your workers. As a rule of thumb, you should transfer enough SCVs from your main so that every mineral patch at your natural is being mined from by one SCV. This varies on the timing of the natural, of course, since the later you take the natural, the more SCVs you will have in your main, so you can transfer more to the natural to have equal saturation at both bases. For example, in case of a 1 rex fast expand, you should transfer 6 SCVs, which makes 7 SCVs total with a building SCV, And in case of a bunker factory expand, I would start mining the natural with 8 SCVs, since it is a bit later than the Rex fast expand opening. When you build your initial structures, you should try to use the same SCV for multiple buildings to save the travel time for other SCVs to the building area. Here, for example, I use the same SCV that built the first depot to build the barracks, and it also builds the second depot. When you want to build a new structure, you can queue up a command to return to mining by right-shift clicking back to a mineral field in the time frame before the construction is started. This reduces the idle time of your SCVs that finished construction. Some words regarding SimCity. There are two ways to use your initial buildings to mitigate early game harassment. One is to wall the entrance of your main or natural so that no enemy units can enter your base, and the other one is to build your stuff near your mineral line in a for you favorable configuration to defend early on. I strongly suggest to use a wall-in for new players because it is much easier to defend early game attacks. The only downside is that you have to learn the walls for the maps you are playing because they are sometimes not intuitive, like the wall at the 1 o'clock position of Fighting Spirit vs Protoss. But in case that you do not want to wall and instead want to just use SimCity near your mineral line, I will show you the general principle for building SimCity. Versus Protoss, there are various configurations used to defend early Zealot terrors. The more you apply those, the easier of the time you will have to defend your base. This row of buildings shows you all the possibilities that block Zealots from walking in between two buildings, while Marines can fit through each of these gaps. The ordering of the buildings here is important. The barracks has to be on the left side of the supply depot to block Zealots, and the factory has to be on the right side of the supply depot to block them. These configurations block Zealots as long as the buildings overlap horizontally. There are no horizontal gaps where Marines can fit through, but Zealots cannot, so it is hard to build a vertical wall with this property. But there are some special cases where the gap is Zealotite when the structures only touch each other on the corners. With that you can kind of create a vertical wall. You can see here the most extreme examples. If we look for example at the SimCity with the barracks and supply depot, when the top right corner of the barracks touches a supply depot, it is still a Zealotite wall, but it is not tight when the depot touches the bottom right corner of the barracks. With these gaps and micro, you can defend easier versus Zealots because when a Zealot wants to attack your Marine, you can simply move it through the gap and the Zealot has to walk around the buildings to reach it. But you still need to micro your Marines quite a bit to defend it without casualties, and the Protoss player doesn't have to do anything to force this distraction, and it takes a long time to kill a Zealot with 1 or 2 Marines. With the wall-in, you do not have that problem. Versus Zerg, you want to know how to wall your main or natural Zergling tight. For example, if you want to go mech or when you play 2v2 versus a Zerg. Here you see the various configurations that block Zerglings. The most common ones are the walls with 2 depots and a barracks, and a wall with a depot, a barracks and a factory. It is hard to wall your base with a Zergling tight wall since they are slightly smaller than Marines, and sometimes it is just not possible without having at least one gap. If you don't want to wall and just want to play a barracks opening, you should build your first structure near your command center. Then, in case your opponent went for a 4 or 5 pool, you can defend most of your buildings and your mineral line with 1 bunker. Regarding SimCity at your natural, you should build the safety bunker in your natural close to your CC to cover most of your mineral line in case of a Zergling run by. You should also build a depot at your natural to narrow the path so that link busts are less likely to succeed. If you play a 1 barracks fast expand build, this would be your 3rd depot. Keep in mind that a bunker below a command center or below a supply depot is link tight, so there is no gap you have to block with Marines to prevent run-bys. If you play on a new map and don't know the wall-in, I recommend to use an in-base SimCity until you figured out the walls, because you do not know what surprises the map maker might have in store for you, like unbuildable tiles that look like buildable terrain or ridges that always leave a gap in your wall, which makes it useless. Let's go to some more general tips regarding how to manage your base. Every building that is being constructed has an SCV randomly dancing around it. This is often a cause for frustration as it often blocks other buildings from being constructed right next to it. You should take this into account when you want to build new structures. If you leave one tile between the building structure and the new one, it is very unlikely that the dancing SCV will block it. For example, say you want to build 2 supply depots. Then you do not place them next to each other, but leave a 2-tile gap between them, which you will fill later on with another depot. The same holds true, for example, if you want to open up with a 2-factory build. Just leave a one tile space between the factories so that you don't have your machine shop delayed because the SCV building the other factory blocks it. Later on, when you want to add multiple barracks or factories at once and you do not have the space to leave a tile between each building, the most consistent way to build structures next to each other without them being blocked is to have the SCVs already at the construction site and then to place the buildings in quick succession. If you time it well, your buildings will not be blocked because the SCV always goes to the center of the new structure first before it moves around randomly. In general, during the mid and late game, when you want to add multiple factories or barracks because you see the money is piling up despite your production already running at full capacity, grab the amount of SCVs you need from your mineral line and send them to your construction site first before you place the new buildings. Until they arrive, you can do something else for a couple of seconds, like scouting with a vulture. So now, how should you lay out your main base in general? It is important for Terrans to have a tidy base layout because Terran buildings are the most bulky in the game with having supply depots and add-ons. Usually your main base has one area about the size of one screen, which is your macro area, where you can place all your production facilities, and the rest of your main is used for supply depots and tech structures. You can align your first factory or barracks of your macro area to your refinery or CC and leave a one-tile gap to not waste space. With that, you should be able to build 2 rows of factories or barracks between your main and natural on most maps. Your supply depots should be neatly placed next to each other, and the same applies to your production facilities. This allows for a much more fluent macro cycle, since you can simply jump to your production with one hotkey and quickly build units from all your factories or barracks, and you do not have to scroll your screens through your base for every building, which takes time. Also, by placing your depots tight, you have more space for more production once you have more than 3 bases. A rule of thumb is that you can support 3 factories per base or 4 barracks per base. So including the starport, you want to have enough space for approximately 10 production facilities in your main. Additionally, you have to fit more than 20 depots and all the tech buildings in your base. So if you scatter your buildings all over the place, you cannot add any more production in the later stages of the game, because your main is full, and on most modern maps you cannot build anywhere else other than in close proximity of an expansion. And one final thing regarding your base layout: when you build your base, avoid walling of your main CC. Except for the depot that improves the spawning location, you should at least leave a one-tile gap between the CC and other surrounding buildings, so that your SCVs have an easier time finding a construction site. Also, do not block the direct path between your main mineral line and your natural, so that you can quickly transfer SCVs to another base. In the last part of this video, I will talk about some basic reactions to early game harassment. A very typical scenario you face when playing is if you get scouted by a probe or a drone, the scout often starts to attack the SCV that is building the barracks. To prevent your SCV from dying, you should pull 1 or better 2 SCVs from your mineral line, and with one you start chasing the probe. With the other one you switch out the damaged SCV building the barracks and return it to mining. If the damaged SCV is below half health and is still being attacked, you should repair it with another SCV. Repair is slower than the damage dealt by the worker, so you cannot simply out-repair the damage. When you scout your opponent as Terran, you should generally not harass the workers of your opponent, except for if they are also Terran, because Protoss and Zerg workers are usually not isolated like SCVs, and SCVs do not heal automatically, so the more damage you take needlessly, the faster your scout will be killed. In general, if you are a beginner at Starcraft, do not focus too much on your scout, because you probably do not recognize the details of your opponent's opening anyway. I often see beginners focus a lot on their scout, trying to harass or trying to keep it alive a little bit longer, and forget to build SCVs or forget to start their factory or CC on time, and that is not worth it. If your scout is killed early, just play a safe opening and get your engineering bay or bunker on time to be ready for any kind of aggression. At the beginner level, slight build order disadvantages play only a minor role and can easily be compensated by having constant worker production. The next most common scenario besides probe or drone harass is early zealot pressure. Say Protoss goes for a forward gateway and you want to go for a bunker fast expand build. You are starting a bunker in your natural or want to start it, and you suddenly see a zealot walking in. In this case, you should abandon your plan of going for a straight up bunker expansion because you have no SimCity at the natural, and it would be very difficult to deal with a zealot in the open unless you are flash. Retreat to your SimCity in your main, build your third depot, and switch up to a fake double opening or a siege expansion and build continuously marines. If you didn't wall and the zealot walks into your base, you should use 2 to 3 SCVs in addition to your marines to fight it. Use the SimCity to fight off the zealots and try to not have your factory delayed too much. In this example you see how difficult it is to defend early zealot aggression while keeping up with your build. With a wall at your ramp you do not have to deal with that most of the time. The zealots are usually followed up with dragoons, so you should get a tank first in anticipation of them. If your micro battle versus the zealots went really poorly, you can make a vulture before the machine shop, but you then probably need to pull more SCVs to fight the incoming dragoon and to block your ramp. After you get the tank, you can push back the opponent and take your natural behind spider mines and then continue into the mid game without being behind. Another common scenario would be a 9-pool opening in TVZ, where you want to go for a barracks expansion and scout Zerg cross position. Then you either see some Zerglings moving out like you see in this video, or you barely miss them but you don't see a natural hatchery or it was just started. In this case you have to abandon your initial plan of building your CC at the natural location and immediately pull like 5 SCVs to your ramp to block it and start your CC in your main base. You can also mineral walk your SCVs to your natural to get them to your ramp faster. When you positioned your SCVs at the ramp, select them together with the marines and press hold position, so that the SCVs don't run away when they are attacked. While you block the ramp, continue macroing up. If your opponent did not lose all Zerglings when he attacked, do not send the blocking SCVs back to mining, because there could be a follow-up bust attempt. If you do not know if your opponent continued Zergling production, you should make a bunker at the natural. You can move down the ramp a little bit with your forces, but do not leave the ramp. If your opponent denies your bunker and you don't know how many Zerglings he has, do not get baited into defending it. Just cancel the attempt and wait until you have stim and fire beds. With this final part I covered everything I could think of to help new Terrans manage their base easier and to improve their play with it. Thank you for watching.